묘사 시대 신주 시대 명주 시무상주 시무등등 주능 제유 최고 진실부라 고설반야 바라밀타주 즉설주와 아제아제 바라 승아제 모지사바 아제 바라 승아제 모지사바 아제 바라 승아제 모지사바 마하반야 바람이다 신경.
Okay, so everybody can hear me pretty clearly, right? Yeah, okay, good. So this is our our monthly first Tuesday of the month get together and talk about Buddhist chanting club. And this month, as we have been for several months now, we're talking about the Heart Sutra. Anything and everything that has to do with the Heart Sutra. And if you get into the Heart Sutra, of course, um, you know, in theory, and I believe in fact, that the Heart Sutra somehow uh, has all of the Buddhist teachings within it. Um, so that's a pretty big um, territory. The floor is now open. Questions, observations, experiences with the Heart Sutra, things we've talked about in the past that you want to bring up again, or that anybody here. Okay, so one thing that's good. Oh, Jennifer, did you have something? Looked
Well,
like maybe, yeah.
it was kind of just a quick thought. I just wanted to say my personal
Mm-hmm.
experience with the Heart Sutra is was in English.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
in the Korean, that's uh, so interesting. But it was the
Mm-hmm.
first thing I worked on memorizing, and at one point I
Yeah.
did have it memorizing, and I used to chant it every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just wanted to say that
Yeah.
it did feed me um, constantly in the English
Mm-hmm.
form and teachings.
Yeah. And it's good to even if you as I and many people have, even if you memorize it in a Chinese form, uh, to for any chant that you learn in a foreign language or not in your native language, it's good to know the meaning of it, even if it's not necessarily translatable completely. You should know something about why you're doing it. I mean, especially if you are a Zen Buddhist. Zen Buddhists are supposed to ask questions. Zen Buddhists are not supposed to blindly do things because someone says do this. You're supposed to uh, try to understand what you're doing. And so and one way of understanding the Heart Sutra is just to do it a lot. And ultimately that's the most important thing. But at the same time, you know, there's so I'm just saying knowing it in English is good, and then looking at different English translations is also good. And uh, it can be quite interesting. Why is it this way in one translation and this way in another translation? And um, yeah. Oh, but one thing that I thought of as we were chanting it is that there is a koan. It's a kind of an apocryphal koan. I've tried to track it down. I can't find the original source for it. It's kind of it's not, but it's just um, how can you count to 10 without using numbers? And the title of the Heart Sutra in the Chinese form has 10 syllables. So Mahabanya Paramilta Shimgyong. And you can use that if you do breath counting uh, meditation as a technique. You can ma ha, ban, ya, ba, da, mil, ta, shim, gyong, and then start over again. And then you're counting to 10 and starting over again at 1 without using numbers. And for most sutras, and including the Heart Sutra, I think in particular, the title of the sutra is supposed to contain the essence of the entire sutra. So it's good to know that, the title of the Heart Sutra, in my opinion. Mahabanya Bara Milta Shimgyong Guan Jaje Bosa Heng Shimbanya. And I like the little tune that we use. And if you listen to, as I do, um, recordings of chanting on YouTube or any other, I mean, I used to listen to recordings of chanting before YouTube existed, but now, but yeah, you'll find that different people chant it differently. Um, and just as there are different English translations, there's different kind of tunes and rhythms or whatever. Anyway, so do you still do the Heart Sutra as part of your practice, Jennifer? Not to, I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Um, I I haven't. That's one of the reasons I wanted to start coming to this Heart
Mm-hmm,
Sutra study
mm-hmm,
because I just love it so much. I don't have it. I have to go back and relearn some of the parts of it, but
mm-hmm,
just so yes, to answer your question, yes, I am incorporating it back into my practice because I would like to learn more about it.
mm-hmm,
Uh, but it just informed my practice. Um, um, Form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. Like you're saying, how it contains. You
mm-hmm,
said it should contain all. It contains many of the Buddhist teachings
yep,
within it, and
mm-hmm,
um, so it, was so helpful to carry
yep,
that with me.
For me, like I think you're on like so Curtis, you're saying the same thing. Like it has the essence of it because it's funny how when I'm like going through my mundane day, I find, oh, this is so empty. This is so full. This is formless. This isn't real and relative and ultimate truth. Like it's like I question a lot of things. Like I feel like sometimes I live in a perpetual koan, right? Like I'm constantly questioning everything and like like how how auspicious is this that I got that green light, right? I really want to get home. Like and I'm like, but I would have had the patience for the red light anyway, right? Like I would have found the patience. What choice would I have had, right? Like, and it's like, and I find it in the most ridiculous things. Like I've been pouring resin and it doesn't always harden as fast as I want it to. And I want it to go faster. And then I literally end up putting on like the Heart Sutra or one of my mantras to calm me down so that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go focus on this now because the form is made. I just need to let it
mm-hmm,
solidify, right? And that's like the seeds of the Heart Sutra. Like the form is there, the seeds are planted. We just have to really just pluck and identify all of these things out of like our mundane life. But I find when I listen to the Heart Sutra sometimes, my heart opens up so much and it feels like I'm pouring out like tons of love out of my heart chakra. But at the same time, like it's so scary to let my humanity make me so vulnerable, right? Like to cultivate that. And I know sometimes you have to like dump out all of the pain before all of the healing can come in. And it's just weird because I'm like, is it pain that's shooting out, or is it like, is it my understanding? Like all of that, my me emptying my cup. Is it like my me emptying my cup? Because I feel as my heart opens more and more, like I'm able to understand the relative and ultimate truth clearer,
Hmm.
which then I can take that whole Heart Sutra quite literal. And it's, it puts it in our essences.
Hmm.
I really enjoy the Heart Sutra. And I listen to it like literally almost every day. I'm pretty sure I do listen to it every day. It's on one of the 30 tabs on my laptop.
Yeah.
It's pinned.
So, I don't know if there's interest in it, but one thing that Tiffany has mentioned, I think twice now, is this whole idea of relative and ultimate truth, which is actually, in my opinion, kind of important in the Heart Sutra. Um, but I just wonder if Tom and Jennifer are interested in that, or have any, you know, or not interested in that, looking into that a little bit.
Repeat the question. Interested in what?
In um in the idea of relative versus ultimate truth, and in
Oh,
particular how they relate to the Heart Sutra.
yeah. It, I'd be very interested in that.
Well, oh, Jennifer, are you interested in that too? Yeah, okay. So, but um what do you think, Tom? What's what's your interest? I mean, can you say something about why that's interesting to you?
Yeah. So I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you what where my interest really lies a lot lately,
Hmm.
and yes, it does have a pretty deep bearing on the Heart Sutra. But what I've been reading over and over and trying to maybe you can help with this. Maybe someone has the answer. What I've been reading a lot is going back over and over again Seong San's nine consciousnesses.
Okay.
And, and so the line I was just looking at in here, right, um, that I was gonna bring up uh, was where we start saying no eyes, no ears, no nose, etc. No touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so forth, until no realm of mind consciousness.
Hmm.
And I just don't necessarily get get the use of no realm of mind consciousness.
Hmm.
And I'm just not sure how to take that line.
Hmm.
Uh, is it due to emptiness? I don't know how he's using the line.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, so let me just enter that kind of. So this is a place where you can have knowledge of like the words and the terms that are being used, just basic Buddhist vocabulary. That doesn't necessarily, in my case at least, doesn't necessarily mean any deep level of understanding. But I know I know what's being talked about there. Okay, so what there in Buddhism there are six senses. You know, there's this usual five senses, and there's
yeah,
also the mind as a sense, which means that even if you know you can see, hear, touch, taste, sense things
yeah.
completely in your mind without any physical thing being there to be sensed. You can still have all those senses, um, which is one way of understanding, the mind sense. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to try to explain the mind sense any. But so there's the sense organs, okay. Then there's the sense objects.
Consciousness, yeah,
Well, then and when the sense organ and the sense object come into contact, then there's the consciousness. The consciousness arises from the and again, this is, you know, you can write, not only can you write, but people have written books about this, but all 18 of those are then being referred to, and that's why, and but they aren't listed each individually, and so it gets up to, so it's the, and so forth until, and so that's the 18th one is the mind consciousness. Okay, and so they are all like, what is it, what does it say there in the Heart Sutra? It says, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They do not appear or disappear, are not tainted or pure, do not increase or decrease. Therefore, in what is it? How does it go? Therefore, in emptiness, no form, no feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, and so forth until
No object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so
no realm
forth.
of eyes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So no realm of mind consciousness.
Yeah. Right. And so what's uh yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry if I mangled it. I even though I have it memorized, if I don't start from the very beginning, I can't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mess up. So, um, if you find a good commentary on the Heart Sutra, and I think both the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh's, and there's others, but they will explain that there's the 12 realms and the 18 realms, which are
Yeah.
the, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
but as to the specific question of what does what what specifically, so what's, there's nothing specific that's being said about the realm of mind consciousness. It's saying it's the same as all the other ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but what's
What is it?
what's happening there? Yeah, what is it? What's happening there? When you
Hmm.
say no
Hmm.
realm of mind consciousness,
Right. And
what is
Curtis,
occurring?
are they talking about the like Nirmanakaya? Like, are they talking about our formless form when he says no realm of, when they say no realm of mind consciousness? Like, that's our formless form, right? Like
yeah, so I would not
that's my
the
understanding of it.
Nirmana, so um
Our
I don't,
spiritual, physical, and mental, the three. I never can remember the three words.
mhm.
I'm the worst.
The Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dharmakaya. Yeah.
Yep.
And so usually I think of those in relationship to the bodies of a Buddha or a great Bodhisattva. Um, and to some extent, you can say that we have those as well, at least potentially. Um, but
But it isn't that what it's discussing at from a bodhisattva's point of view? The Heart Sutra, no Buddha, no bodhisattva is suffering because they realize this.
mhm.
So isn't it coming from like a bodhisattva POV?
um, I'm gonna say I don't see it that way, and the way I see it is this, that these are, if you study Buddhist psychology, and that's what this section of the Heart Sutra is referring to, is referring to the way consciousness arises from the interaction of the sensory organs and the thing that is perceived, um, and ultimately they're all empty. Ultimately, and who? So that ties in with the relative versus ultimate, right? Ultimately they're all empty. And so one way that people will interpret this part of the Heart Sutra and the rest of the Heart Sutra is that, aha, they're empty, so we don't need to know about this stuff, you know? But what the Heart Sutra is actually teaching is that, in my opinion, is that you should understand at least the basics. I mean, Buddhist psychology is really fascinating and really uh, mind boggling to some extent, mind numbing. And I can only take so much of it at a time. Um, but it is very interesting to dig into until my eyes start to glaze over and I can't take it anymore. Um, but at the same time, to whatever extent that we can understand, um, and the Buddha didn't teach this stuff for nothing, so it does help to understand. I mean, it, ult- ultimately, not in so it helps to understand how suffering happens, how our minds work, and how our minds create suffering. Um, but at the same time, uh, those teachings can easily become just another source of attachment. Uh, and so that the to whatever extent we have some understanding of them, we also need to understand that they are ultimately empty. And what does that mean? Well, I mean, one thing that it means is that it's definitely an invitation um, uh, to meditate on whatever, using whatever limited understanding we have, meditate, on that and take that into our practice. Um, but it's also a reminder that we don't understand. It's a um, you know a uh, an invitation to recognize our don't know mind.
Okay, can I ask the question, like my question a different way then?
Yeah. Hmm.
What state are you in?
Right now.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
in the
What
in
mental state are you in when you have um, no realm of mind consciousness?
mhm.
What mental state are you in?
Yeah. And so I can't give a good answer to that, but I mean that is one of the ways of really digging into the Heart Sutra is and into a lot of teachings is to see them as basically meditation instructions. Um, that uh, so that's a slightly different way of approaching it than what you said, Tom. But it's like saying um, uh, instead of saying what state are you in, to use the Heart Sutra as a way of investigating that state. I wouldn't even say attaining it because attaining is probably going too far, but approaching it. And then, how else are you going to attain it if you don't approach it? So getting close to it or getting a good look at it. Um, uh, yeah. And yeah, and people often look at the Heart Sutra in just exactly that way, as something to practice. Whether and so one way of practicing the Heart Sutra is to, I don't know, think about it. But another way of practicing the Heart Sutra is to uh, uh, do it. And I mean it by its very nature it invites us to do it as a physical practice, something to memorize and say, and you can also write it, which is one thing I've been working on for a couple of years now, learning to write it in the Chinese characters.
Yeah.
Which a good starting point for that is the title, which is another reason why I like the title, because that's even that I can't really do very well yet. I mean, I can do it with a little help, um, but writing the Heart Sutra is considered, and so Korean people sometimes will write it in Korean. They can write it in Korean, or you can write it using the Chinese characters. You could write it in English. You could write it out in English. That is a practice, a very high class practice, I would say, in and of itself. Um, but it isn't necessary. I mean, if it's something that interests you, I would look into it. And it is considered one of the main writing, because what you're doing is you are writing the words of the Buddha. or in this case, the words of Avalokiteshvara, with the Buddha sitting, right there approvingly. It's a sutra. And actually, so writing sutras is considered a wonderful way of accumulating merit. Um, and so the Heart Sutra is being a very short sutra, a lot easier than writing the Diamond Sutra or the Avatamsaka Sutra or something like that. Yeah.
What about if you just repetitively write the title or the mantra part?
Mm-hmm.
Because I literally find myself like just randomly, like I'll be washing dishes or stirring the pot at the stove, and I'll be like, "Gate, gate, bara, gate." That's fun. And like I find it all day long, right? Like it's just it's in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just in the vortex of my brain that does mantras. It's like part of the loop. And I like catch myself, like I'll be brushing my teeth and it'll be going off in my head and I'll be like and it's like what a wonderful way to start my day.
Yeah.
And then like I I think like to Tom's question is like what state are you in? I feel like that's the nirvana state where we don't get to stay there all day long, right? We
Mm-hmm.
get those little glimpses and moments of the nirvana state. The
Mm-hmm.
Buddha, he's so awesome that he could just be there all day long. But we're working on it. So but like those little moments, that state, like I think that state that you speak of is like nirvana. Like that is our we're present, we're here, we're quiet, we're we're content inside ourselves. We feel that emptiness of thought, of extreme emotions or chaos or any of that moment, and you don't even realize you did it until you're like, oh wait, wow, what? And then all the thoughts flood back in and you're like, wait, what happened? Like those moments are like when I feel like the Heart Sutra just creeps up in me
Mm-hmm.
and just starts going on crazy, and it catches me randomly. And that's the mental state I find myself in, is like it feels like bliss, it feels like peace, it feels like when you sit down after walking all day at like a fair and your feet hurt and you just want to sit and your butt, your back, everything just hurts. And that second when you sit down and all of that pressure is released, it just that to me is the essence of the Heart Sutra. Like that emptiness of consciousness and such.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that is that strikes me about this is, and I can't put it into words well, but we're going through this whole, I don't want to, no eyes, no ears, etc.
Mm-hmm.
This whole concept, all of these know this, know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing is that I think it's always interesting when you have to describe something by what it's not and not by what it is. But I used to go. I was still fundamentally Buddhist, but we didn't have any place around where I was living, so I went to the Unitarian Universalist Church
Mm-hmm.
and started a meditation group there, and I gave the occasional sermon, so mine would always be Buddhist, right? And that was, of course, with Unitarian Universalists, that was fine with them. They liked that just fine. Um, but I had this experience, and the experience was we had a part-time UU minister, And and we always did a period of meditation inside the service, just short, 5 minutes or less. But she pulled out this little tiny bell, a bell that was, I don't think it was an inch and a half tall or an inch and a half in diameter. And she just went ting on that bell. And the way it struck, I couldn't stop smiling. And I had no thoughts about it. It was just this overwhelming feeling of joy about it. And and if you ask me to describe it in words, I can't do that. I can't. But that's kind of the state it reminds me of, is just that unbounded, and it doesn't have to be that's unbounded joy, but just I'm just saying it brings to mind for me a state that you cannot put into words, a state that you can't describe accurately to someone else.
And in a sense, it's a state that you can't bring about, even though your experience of it did have kind of a sequence of events that kind of brought it about, but you can't go back and then recreate it. You can't say, okay,
That's
just
right.
okay, ring the bell again. So I want to experience that. Doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily. At the same time, though, having experienced it, you know that you can experience it, and you know, so not being able to bring it about doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to bring it about, or that you shouldn't, seek after it again. In fact, you
Uh,
kind of
uh,
have to. And the Buddha had that experience. In the life story of the Buddha, he when he was very young, he had a very spontaneous experience with meditation sitting under a tree when he was just a kid. And after his 6 years of ascetic practice and literally nearly killing himself through ascetic practice, he recalled his earlier experience, and Thich Nhat Hanh really actually does a very good job of describing this. Um, he recalled this very pleasant experience of spiritual practice that had come about very spontaneously, and that's actually the middle way. That was what the Buddha took up as his practice when he sat under the Bodhi tree. And I'm probably not. I'm certainly not describing this as well as Thich Nhat Hanh does, but um, that spontaneous. That was his experience of hearing the bell and having this spontaneous experience of joy, or what Tiffany was describing earlier. We have that potential, and it's important to know that we have that. It's important to have experiences in our life that show that to us. We have lots of experiences in our lives of suffering and disappointment and grasping and trying to, whatever, um, running in the running like rats in the wheel or whatever. But um, we also have the other experiences as well, and usually people have. Uh, it's important for us to know that exists. Uh, that we have that potential. And then then there's this issue of, well, but you can't make it happen, right? And that's actually a place where the relative and absolute ideas become useful, because you can go too far with insisting that you can't make it happen. Because if you go too far with saying you can't make it happen, means, well, then why try? um, if you go too far with saying I'm going to make it happen, then you also don't get anywhere. So the relative and absolute is another way of talking about the middle way. The Buddha very nearly killed himself with ascetic practices trying to make it happen. Um, and in a to some extent he had to go through that. Um,
Yeah.
but then
Instead of
he had
trying
also.
to make it happen,
Hmm.
I think it's more like let it happen
Let it happen. Yes.
or be open to it happening.
Hmm.
Or
Right.
notice if it does happen.
What is that?
Or notice if it does happen.
Notice if it does happen, and
Oh,
appreciate it when it does happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
That actually, that comment really interests me because we are in everyday samsara,
Hmm.
right? And as samsara has latched onto you, right, and you're at work or whatever you're doing, participating in whatever it is you're doing, you can miss things like that. And I
Yeah.
guess that's what being always trying to be mindful is about,
In the sutra, how it says, like, there's no form as emptiness,
Hmm.
emptiness is not form and stuff. That like shows the interdependence of everything, right? Like nothing is really separate. Like you were saying, you can't describe something without describing it what it isn't, right?
Hmm.
Like, and that gets tricky because, you know, you can't define a wall without knowing what a wall is, right? What a wall isn't. A wall isn't a window, it isn't a door, it isn't a floor, it isn't a ceiling, right? And it's like, okay, it's the thing that's this way, it's that vertical, like describe a wall, like tell me what a wall is, right? And or like the Bodhidharma, bring me your mind and I will tame it. When I look for it, I can't find it, right? So it's like, how do you present something that's not physically there but is there? And that's like I like to tell people all the time, there's like over 8 billion people in this world, and it's happening to each of us differently.
yeah.
Like we are all experiencing it through our own perceptions and our own understandings and level of understandings. So you have to like describe what that person is by describing what they aren't. Describing what Zen and peace is by describing what it isn't. Like, and then I think sometimes we get lost in that. Like we forget that turning on the lights and the lights turning on and the electric being paid is a blessing. Or like there are people who don't have lights, right? Like these are things, and having a meal, like these are all like these blessings. Like my plate is empty, but my belly is full. Relative and ultimate truth can't exist without each other. Right. Like I have to empty my cup to fill it with more knowledge and all that. And I love the constant interdependence of it. Again, with the traffic light, two opposing directions cannot have a green light at the same time. You can only have a red and a green. If they're going together, they're going to smush. And there is no middle way on that, right? But the middle way is that pause right there between the green and the red switching when it goes yellow to red, and then the light, everybody puts their foot on the gas, right? Like that little, and it's like, the traffic lights can't exist without each other. They need each other. Our stress can't exist without our peace. It's interdependent. Our happiness, our bliss, it's fleeting. It's, it's ever evolving. It changes all day long. Like the quote, "This too shall pass," that applies both ways. Happiness When you're happy, think this too shall pass. When you're sad, this too shall pass, right? And that helps me get back to the Heart Sutra, right? Like it helps me get back to the okay, the emptiness, the form, the relative, the ultimate, and it keeps me in the balance of the middle way. Because yeah, it's crappy now, and it's gonna be better soon. The middle part is, the journey.
Journey.
Back where, right when you started, you talked about everybody understands it or thinks of it or does it differently. And that, I always think of that. I always tell people that if I'm trying to teach a meditation class. I tell people, well, honestly, I think there are 8 billion ways to meditate. Right? There are 8 billion people, there are 8 billion ways to meditate because I cannot tell you with any exactness what is going on in my head or what went on in the Buddha's head, etc., etc. You just have to work with it and see, you know, see what works or and what you can.
I think that goes along the lines with like the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, 84,000 ways to enter Dharma and peace, right? There's no right or wrong way to meditate, to find your Zen, to hit that. If it gets you there, that's what gets you there. And if it only gets you there that one time, like with the bell, I understand that. And then you can never recreate that, but you can always recall that
Hmm.
and that energy and remember like that was such a beautiful moment. Like, and when you were sharing it, it was like, wow, that's so like, oh, that was so sweet. That's so beautiful, little tiny bell just making everything just and it's like, thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you for relaying that with me because that it put me in that time and space with you for a second, but you recalled it as well. So it became a today reality and not a past reality. So I like that.
Just know that, by the way, I felt like an idiot because I literally could not stop smiling. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's okay. We like smiling. All the
Hmm.
monks are always bald and smiling. I always wonder what they're thinking.
um, uh, Jennifer, now I know that when we first started talking about relative versus absolute, you kind of raised your hand and you said that you were definitely interested in that. So, what are you interested in terms of relative and absolute in the Heart Sutra and life, the universe, and everything?
Um, wow. Let's see. Um, let me just see what comes to. I what was kind of going through my head as I was listening to everybody talk is I remember experiencing this idea of if I've if I've loved you once, then I've loved you forever. Like just as an example, or like Tiffany, when you were talking about ringing the bell, that I just have this experience of okay, I feel my grandmother near me, or I don't know if I'm having memories of but I just I'm sensing my grandmother, and
Hmm.
so I savor that, and I just take that as it's like I saw a cartoon once that said time and space is just God's way of keeping everything from happening at the same time, something like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And I guess that's what comes to my mind when I think of relative and absolute truth, like that absolute truth is everything and nothing at the same time. I can't, I don't even have words to express the sensations it brings to me, but that's what it makes me think of absolute truth. I guess everything and nothing at the same time, and that the relative truth, like Craig was saying this morning, is kind of like how you walk across the street safely.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. You don't want to say the
Maybe.
cars don't exist, right?
Right.
Because you exist, the cars exist, and you want to keep them separate. Um, and you also want to get from one side of the street to the other. And and all of that is, involves time and space, and also involves what, people often think of, you know, negatively as dualistic thinking, I do not want to get hit by a car. What should I do in order to make sure that I do not get hit by a car? Um, you know, and don't walk and walk, it's very, red and green, Tiffany was talking about traffic lights, you know, um, so Zen Master Sung San used to talk about, correct function. When Zen Master Degak talks about it too, he usually doesn't say correct function. He usually just says, you know, there is no self, but don't eat off of other people's plate. Um, so and and so the Heart Sutra has a lot of very dualistic relative talk in it. It also has a lot of very non-dualistic talk. All the knows is all, know this, know that, know, and so there is a certain extent to which you don't want to use words and concepts, although the Heart Sutra is words and concepts. But anyway, so it's good to have. Um, I'm kind of babbling. It's good to have both.
So that also, I want to add one thing I just
Hmm.
thought of.
Hmm.
Okay, so when uh, along those lines, I want to, instead of relative and ultimate, I want to use the term conventional versus ultimate. So right away, when we're talking about the five skandhas, right? The five skandhas are going to help you differentiate between what is conventional reality
Hmm.
and what is ultimate reality
Right.
by examining,
Hmm.
where what the process is, what happens, and where your feelings will take you to draw a false conclusion.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and the very so the very fact that there can be a false conclusion is dualistic. But at the
Yes.
at the very one of the last things in the Heart Sutra before the mantra, it says that the Heart Sutra is true, not false. Which is, I mean, and I really like the fact, and that's one of the advantages of kind of looking at the original Chinese or even going back to the Sanskrit, is that that's not put in there by the translator. That's it there in the original. True, not false. Kind of doubling down on uh, the dualism of it, um, because well, one good thing about that is you don't want to get attached to non-dualism.
I feel like attachments are traps that create, but the traps free us, if that makes sense,
The traps free
right? Like,
us.
but the traps free us. Like, stick with me for a second.
Hmm.
So you're you're attached to something and it's got you trapped. But when you realize that you're trapped, you can release. It's like you put your
Yeah.
hand in a cookie jar and you try to get a cookie out and it's too big and you don't want to let go of the cookie, right? But if you let go of the cookie, you could take your hand out.
Hmm.
So either that or your hand is stuck in the pot forever, right? The 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 attachments are like that. And then we realize like it creates a problem solving for us. So it brings it to our self-awareness, it brings it to our mindfulness, it brings it to our relative reality, because the ultimate reality is like it's causing us some serious suffering and we don't really know why. We have this burning angst in us, but we don't understand why. And then when it's brought to our attention, well, oh, it's like, oh, well, it's that thorn in your hand that's causing your hand to hurt. Like, oh, I don't know why my hand just keeps hurting and hurting and throbbing. It's that giant thorn in your hand, right? Oh, you take the thorn out and then it heals, but you still have the hole, and you know that that was where a thorn was. So you have that like a ghost attachment, if you will. Like it's like an invisible, like it's a phantom attachment, but you remember that's where that came from. I don't want anything to do with that. I'm never putting my hand back in that cookie jar like that again, or I'm never gonna just walk around with that thorn in my hand. Like you it's a trap that frees us, because then you become more aware of that, and then you walk around that puddle instead of walking into the puddle,
Hmm.
and then you're free, and it gives you more understanding and clarity and self-awareness to navigate through samsara, because it's tricky. It's really tricky, but I do feel like the attachments are traps that free us.
Hmm. And I think one of the reasons why, so the part of the Heart Sutra that Tom brought up at the very beginning is, I mean, if you really want to study that part of the Heart Sutra, you have to study Buddhist psychology. You have to study, the sense, the Buddhist approach to how how our mind is working all the time. And one of the things that you'll find if you do that, well, first of all, one of the things that I find when I do that is it drives me crazy because it gets very complicated and detailed, and but at the same time, if you can, so that is like an invitation to practice patience. There's only so much patience I can practice at a time, but um, if you can just say, okay, just slow down, Kurt, just kind of read that sentence again in the book gone by someone who actually probably knows what he's talking about or she's talking about, but give it another chance. And what it what it's helping you to do is to look at how your own mind works. And so this thing that Tiffany was saying, that attachments are, what did you say? Attachments can free you, or
Attachments are traps that free us.
that free us. Yeah, and if you see, because that only is true if you see that the attachment is where you're stuck and what you're stuck to. No one likes to be stuck, but then you kind of have to see where you're stuck and what you're stuck to. And you also have to then look down and see that, oh, I'm grabbing onto this, which means, something isn't sticking me. I'm doing it. And that's kind of what studying Buddhist psychology can help us to see, is how, it's empowering because we see how we are actually doing this. It's not being done to us, and what I'm, and suffering is not something that's being done to us. Some suffering is something that we are doing, which that can be tricky because you don't want to tell someone who's suffering, oh, you're just doing it to yourself. That's usually not a very skillful way of helping someone who is suffering. But when you are studying it yourself, what you're trying to see is that how you are actually doing it yourself. Um, I had a,
And then you see it in other people too. The
mhm,
easier when you see it in
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
You see it, and then you can approach someone who's suffering a little differently than you would
hmm.
if you didn't understand your
Right.
own suffering. There's this beautiful Rumi quote, and I really hope I don't get it wrong. Why do you stand in the prison? Why do you keep yourself in the prison when the door is open?
Yeah.
And it's like we do it to ourselves. Why do you keep yourself in the prison when the door is open? Like, but you're right. It's like we find it, and it, it catches us sometimes. We get stuck. but you have to see the stuckness. And that's the best part about being a Buddhist, though. That's my favorite part is checking the stuckness and knowing that everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. It doesn't matter what it is. Even being stuck means I realize I'm stuck. I'm on my way out of being stuck.
Hmm. I'm almost positive Jennifer was going to say something.
There's there's so many things going through my head. I just get so
Hmm.
excited about hearing everybody share.
Hmm.
Um, shoot, I don't know what I was gonna say. Just about suffering, just about like um um like the urgency I currently feel to show up for every moment, uh, like whatever's in it, or just uh, this isn't probably anything to do with. I don't know if this teaching is in the Heart Sutra actually, but just my practice of letting go of past, letting go of future, and being present. Um, it just to let it all just drop and fall away and be here in this moment. Like this is a good moment, which is
Hmm.
passing, changing as we speak, right? But this moment, like this is a great moment, being here with the four of you and being
Hmm.
fully present here. Um, I don't know. I, I'm finding lately in my practice, I don't have words to experience what's happening to me.
Hmm.
um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just happy to be here and having this conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's very helpful for all of us because what I always find is that other people start saying things that are, in in my head. It's like hearing me think out loud through other people's voices, um, which is very helpful. It's extremely helpful, and it's also good to struggle with the words, because it's a way of examining what's already there. It's a way of bring that I don't often quote from the Gospel of Thomas, but when I do, it's usually to say, if you bring forth what is within you, what is within you will save you. If you don't bring forth what is within you will destroy you. Which is a little dark at the end. but but to when we try to talk about our practice, um, we never do it perfectly, but it's a really good exercise to go through, and it's helpful to others because they have the same, we all have this kind of the same, not exactly the same experiences because there's 8 billion of us, right? But and that's important to recognize. It's also important to recognize that we all are doing the same thing in 84,000 or 8 billion different ways.
There's 8 billion people with 84,000 keys. We don't know what we're like a janitor key
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
Just trying to figure out, is this the key that gets me through? Like it's that's a great visual, like the a giant janitor key ring, and everybody has one.
Yeah.
I love being here with you guys and sharing with you guys. And Curtis knows that I spend the majority of my time alone and in like isolation and retreat, just because that's just who I am. Um, like nothing's like my health too, but that's actually going really good. The more
Hmm.
I've been in retreat, the healthier I've gotten. And the more of an understanding I have that I try to figure out how to put it in metaphors or something to share with people because I'm like, oh my God, this thing, I have to share this. This is amazing. I'm like, who am I going to share it with? I look around and I'm like, oh, my fish, my turtle, like my snails, who am I going to share it with? And then I come here with you guys and I love being able to share what I learn. And I know it's sometimes like out there and you just gotta like stick with me for a second. But I love it. I love the morning Dharma talks and everything that we're all in that like mind. And it's nice to know that I'm going to talk to somebody who's been contemplating the same things
Mhm.
that I contemplate, who is in the trajectory of mindfulness and self-awareness that I am in. They don't have to be on the same level. We don't have to even be footing at the same pace kind of thing. We don't have to be running a three-legged race together, but the fact that we all come as spiritual friends together and we all come to try to make sense of it all together. And we're Zens, so we're allowed to have all these billions of questions because asking questions, I'm sorry, and this is so cheesy, is a good way of finding out. Like
Mhm.
is just so it's such a cheesy little statement, but asking questions is a good way of finding out. And
That's
whether it's, huh?
sorry, go ahead. I thought you were finished. Go ahead.
Yeah, like whether it's the way you wanted it to go or not the way you wanted it to go, you still found out, right? The question was asked. And if it's there, it has to be addressed somehow.
It's like what I was thinking of was Ananda saying to the Buddha that half of your spirituality, half of your spiritual life is having good spiritual friends. I'm just paraphrasing
Mhm.
it. And the Buddha saying, Ananda, don't say that. The whole of your
Mhm.
spiritual life is having good spiritual friends.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I even consider like Thich Nhat Hanh's Dharma talk videos and all the Dalai
Mm.
Lama videos. Like I consider and I know this sounds weird, I consider them my spiritual friends because they're
Yeah.
teaching me, they're helping
Mhm.
me, they're guiding me. I would have never found the Heart Sutra if it wouldn't have been for a Thich Nhat Hanh lecture where the next video he was talking about in the Heart Sutra about emptiness. And then the next video was them singing Namo Avalokiteshvara.
Mhm.
And then after that, like the next Dharma talk he gave was again about the Heart Sutra. And I'm like, what is this Heart Sutra thing?
Mhm.
So I look it up and I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. And then Tina Tin,
Mm.
I think I
Mhm.
say it right.
Mhm.
I heard hers and it like made me cry. Like it just made me cry. Like I couldn't I had never experienced something that just hearing the beat and the music and her reciting it just make me just full-fledged cry.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is beautiful. And I was like, thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh. Like, thank you so much. Like, you brought me there. And I had found Thich Nhat Hanh through like a meme or something, right? Like it was a
Yeah.
Buddhist meme that Thich Nhat Hanh had quoted or something. And I was like, who is this guy? And then I Google him and I'm like, oh, look at that guy. He looks nice. And I start listening to him. And here I am, like 5 years later, listening to the same Dharma talks, but now seeing it totally different than when I walked in. And now I can communicate it with my spiritual friends. And that's like, I didn't used to have the words for that, like Jennifer was saying. And that's just us digesting it. We're like just really digesting something new and beautiful and profound that I don't think it always needs the words right away. I think digesting it and sitting with it sometimes sits better and gives us a warmer feel of it and understanding of it. And then it translates
Oops.
better when we're
Sorry.
with our spiritual friends.
Mhm.
Oh, I've spent the last week pouring resin and making little tiny Buddhas and lotus flowers because
Oh.
I'm putting them in little knickknack stores. So I've been so in my Buddha mode. It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
But I have all these little tiny Buddhas. I'm
Cool.
gonna send you one, Curtis, because you sent me stuff.
Thank you.
That's my next plan.
But I think we should wrap it up here. We should recite the four vows together. Okay, let's see. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm not sharing my screen. Put it up on the screen. Share screen. Yeah, thank you all for the discussion. And let's just recite the four vows together to end. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. We vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. We vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. We vow to attain it. May whatever excellent qualities we have gained from this practice be extended for the benefit of all beings. Well, it's been great to spend this time together with all of you, discussing the Dharma among good spiritual friends. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Blessings to
Everybody,
everyone.
thank you.
Bye.